This is such a relaxing process to me. I enjoy every part of setting up and getting ready to restore a new machine. I think I'm just especially excited for this one because it's the oldest featherweight I've ever restored. I love the color of the inside of the box, and the machine itself is really just beautiful. I use a lot of different screwdrivers, but I keep my Chapman's handy because anytime there's a screw that's particularly stubborn, that's my go-to. And you'll see that I'm constantly checking to make sure that the bit I'm using properly fits the head of the screw. I always take the bed extension off first. It just keeps me from grabbing it as I'm taking the rest of the machine apart. I know this machine came with the original Bobbin case. At some point I had taken it off to look at it. Now I'm just trying to remember where I put it. I actually found it with a different machine I had been working on, and that's sort of a risk you have mixing up parts when you have more than one machine that you are restoring at once. But thankfully I did find it after filming this video. I'm just looking again at the manual. There's a page where they glued over an existing page so they wouldn't have to reprint an entire manual to represent the changes they made with this machine. Once I get all the covers off, I'll start in the nose with the presser bar. And I may have to move around if I find parts that are stuck, because I'll spray them and let that soak in for a little bit, and then come back and try them again. You never know which parts are going to give you a hard time. Every machine is just a little bit different. When your presser bar is stuck, you really only want to try moving it up and down or twisting it inside the bushing. If you do need to tap on it to loosen it up, you need to be really gentle and make sure you have the right kind of hammer. You don't ever want to use a metal tip hammer on that presser bar. Once I get the thread take-up system out, that's pretty much everything that I want to take out of the nose. Sometimes I will remove the presser bar lifter too, but in this case, since the machine isn't very dirty, I'm going to clean it in place. Now I can remove the needle plate so I can get to the feed dogs and finally the hook assembly itself. There wasn't a lot of lint packed down inside the feed dogs on this machine, so that was a pleasant surprise. At this point, I will go ahead and start taking apart the tension assembly. And this particular one is the older style without the numbered dials, so it looks like something's missing, but it's really not. So you can see here that this tension assembly is different than the one I took apart on my Featherweight Restoration series, but it's everything I need to get perfect tension. Once I got down to the tension stud, that was very stuck. So I needed penetrating oil and a few other little tricks I have up my sleeve, and I finally did get it out. These are the two set screws that hold the hook assembly onto the shaft, and somehow I missed recording the part where I took them off. Now you see me spraying down inside the holes that the set screws were sitting in. That's going to help me loosen up the hook assembly so I can slide it off of the shaft. It's good practice to get used to flipping your machine around. I find that when I am addressing a stubborn screw like the bobbin winder screws, coming in at a vertical angle with your screwdriver is so much better than trying to do it horizontally. The little school bell style tension bracket for the bobbin winder just makes me smile every time I look at it. It really does make you think of a school bell. Now's where things will start to get a little messy. I'm actually surprised my hands are as clean as they are at this point, but taking out the feed regulator will solve that problem for me totally. After that, it was a good idea to go and wash my hands. Then I take off the ruler that the feed regulator actually sits on. Now's when I'm going to start to really get a good look at the condition of the wiring in this machine. And considering its age, it's really not that bad. However, I feel better just rewiring the whole machine. Before I can remove the lampshade and lead, I have to disconnect the light switch itself. So I'm disassembling that so I can push it through the bottom of the machine and remove the screw that connects the two wires together. Later on in the video, when I actually remove the lead from the lampshade itself, you'll see why I made a good decision from the beginning to go ahead and rewire this machine. Now's where we start to get into removing some parts that I don't show you how to remove in my restoration series. The feed connecting rod, the feed fork, and then eventually the rock shafts themselves are all coming out of this machine. You will see just how dirty these parts get. And if I'm cleaning every other part on the machine, I'm going to take the time to clean these as well. I don't recommend doing this if you don't understand how these parts work and the importance of the rock shafts being reinstalled correctly. It will mess up the alignment of the feed dogs inside your needle plate, so you really do need to understand how these parts work, how the eccentric screws work to adjust the feed dogs, and so on. But you can see how it's done and then decide if it's really something you want to attempt on your own. There are 4 set screws holding the rock shaft centers in place. I'm going to remove them and then add penetrating oil into each of those holes to help me loosen them up so I can finally tap them out. Now, carefully, I can use a punch and a hammer, and all I'm doing is tapping on the ends of these centers to break them free. My goal isn't to push them inside the machine, there's nowhere for them to go. I break them free, and then I can start to wiggle the rock shafts and push the centers out the ends of the machine. Once I've managed to get enough of the center sticking out the end of the machine, my screw removal pliers help me work it the rest of the way out. I just want to caution you here if you try this because you're really working close to painted areas on the machines and you do not want to chip that paint. Also, again, I just want to say, if you don't understand how all these parts go back together, I wouldn't remove them from the machine. Once I tap out this last center, I'm done taking parts off of the machine and it is ready for me to go ahead and clean it. I'm not done disassembling parts yet though. We still have to take apart the motor, and there are a few other parts that I like to disassemble just a little bit further before I clean them. This cloth covering has seen better days. I'm going to go ahead and remove it, and when I rewire parts of the motor, it will be replaced with some heat shrink tubing that's actually going to fit inside the machine so much easier than that cloth covering did. The armature is out, and I only found 2 washers, one on each end of it, so I need to remember that one went on each end when I put it back together. Now I'm going to take the bobbin case position plate off of the bottom of the needle plate. You would be surprised at how much lint collects inside of it. And next, I'll finish taking apart the hook assembly. If you're going to soak any of these parts to clean them, this is such a good idea because water can collect in all these little crevices, and where you have standing water, you can find rust later. So if you can take them apart, I highly recommend doing that. Here's where I remove the lead from the lampshade. And once I get inside, you're going to see why I needed to rewire this machine. As I'm wiggling this apart, one of the terminal ends snaps off and is stuck inside the socket. I had to tap it out. So I will clean off the old solder, and then those little terminal ends will be soldered to new wiring for the lamp lead. And look at that. Every part I took off of the Featherweight is now sitting here, ready for me to clean them, inspect them, and put them back on the machine. For me personally, it's probably the most rewarding and satisfying way I could spend an afternoon. I hope you learned something. Maybe you have a few questions now. Once this is all cleaned up, I will start to put the machine back together, and I'd be happy to share that process with you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again real soon.